Hi, this is Rita from creativepursuitsetc.com. I have a little website with some quilt patterns, lots of baby quilts because I've been having a lot of little grandchildren making a lot of patterns. But I want to show you this. This is my first quilt that I ever made. That is a quilt that I made before I was a quilter. I was a sewer, so I bought a little book that had the directions with the measurements for this. And this is a quilt as you go quilt. You can kind of tell that there's raw edge seams on it, but you're quilting each block one at a time, and when you join it together with the seams are up on the front like this, and it adds to the design element. So this is quilt as you go. After I started quilting, took some classes and made patterns, I still loved quilt as you go method. So I made a pattern for this one based on that idea. This is called Little Chief and Sister Sue, S-I-O-U-X, and same idea. She has a little baby on her back, and then he's like a Sunbonnet Sam, but it's got a little different character on it. So same thing with the seams are on the front. Then I did this quilt recently, and this one was supposed to be a kitty quilt, and then we ended up getting a puppy at the same time. So there's our dog's in here too. He's this little black and white dog, but he loves kitties. So this one is a quilt as you go method, same difference with 12-inch blocks. There's 13 of them. So this pattern is called Baker's Dozen, but you can put any 12-inch block and substitute for different things. You can see it on this one is the same as the quilt as you go, where the seams are on the back. I haven't washed this one yet, so they haven't ruffled up as much, but you can see how it looks on the back. Then I discovered by watching YouTube videos, discovered my favorite method for quilting as you go. And it's this quilt right here. This is the same quilt as this one, only instead of having 13 blocks, I cut it down to 5 blocks because some of my grandkids are really small and they can't carry around this big quilt. It ends up getting, pretty heavy. It's a good bed quilt. So this one is 13 blocks, this one is 5, but the same thing. But instead of having raw edges on the front or the back's finished off. So on this one, we do the applique on the block, and then we put the batting on the back, and we do the quilting on the block before we join it to the other blocks in the quilt. And then when all the top is done with just the top and the batting, then we put the backing on, and then we stitch in these stitches, or we can quilt around some of the details, and that ends up having a finished quilt, and then you just bind it. So I like both methods. So soon we're going to be having some tutorials on each one of these methods for some of you that might like those different techniques. This is one more that's called Stitch and Flip, where you make the center block and then you have the batting and you stitch it down with a 1/4-inch seam and then flip it, and then you just keep adding the strips as you go, and it gets bigger and bigger. And of course, because I have to have applique, you can put applique in between them, but it'll be a really fun quilt. This is going to have 12-inch blocks that you actually could use in a quilt like this, and just put the fabrics that you like with that too. So, and this is what it looks like when this block is finished. And it's all quilted because you've quilted each one of these down, so you can tell that the last one is open, but when you join the seam, it'll be joined into the quilt too. So we're going to start those tutorials soon for any of those techniques that you might be interested in, so please subscribe and you can follow us along. And thanks for joining in today.